The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
Is it my story, your story, his story, her story, Jane's story, Joe's story? Is it just an allegory? The show's about to start and we still don't have a name for it. Bop, 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 bop. It's a long story.
Aging and cystic fibrosis are words you don't always hear in the same sentence, but on this podcast, you'll hear them all the time, with relevant discussions and unexpected explorations wherever this podcast might take us.
So many people with CF are living longer thanks to modulators and medical advances. We thought it was time to get into some real conversations with expert guests and people from all walks of CF about what living longer with CF means, the good and the not so good.
I'm Dr. Ahmet Uluer.
And I'm Lauren Harvey.
I'm a medicine and pediatric trained pulmonologist and director of an adult CF center at a Harvard-affiliated hospital right here in Boston.
And I've had CF all my life and was recently diagnosed with CF-related diabetes. I am committed to creating a supportive space for those with CF and their loved ones.
I will bring the medical expertise and provider perspective.
I bring the real-life CF experience.
And together we bring you It's a Lung Story, a monthly podcast about aging with cystic fibrosis, where we take a little time to tell a lung story.
It's a long story.
It's a long story.
Beautiful as always, Andrea. And yeah, harmonize. We talked about that last time. We didn't do it this time.
We'll try next
No.
time.
I mean, but we got to make sure we actually do it. So we want to harmonize, and we're going to need some help, though.
Yeah, it's going to be a two-person situation next time.
Well, it is great to be back today and yet another podcast. My name is Ahmet Uluer, your co-host on today's journey, and I'm once again joined by someone who officially beat summer, conquering a new job, a new house, a new fiance, and even a feral squirrel, and all before Labor Day. Hi, Lauren.
Hello, don't get me started on the squirrel. It has been horrible. I am no longer a squirrel lover.
Yeah, that squirrel was causing havoc. I mean, it was really trying to not only get into your house, but just ruin your life.
Yeah, I have a video of it jumping into our back door trying to get into the house. I thought I was going to die.
And of course, our indomitable producer who's leaving right after this recording to stand in line for the Mandalorian movie set to release in theaters spring of 2026, Andrea Becker.
That's me. Yep. I will be I'll be there with my hat and my shirt and my lightsaber 100%.
I'm going to need a picture.
Mm-hmm.
Andrea's a big Mandalorian fan and somehow connected to the Mandalorian folks, so we're excited about that.
Just 1 degree of separation, really.
You know what? When I'm like introducing you guys, for some reason, I keep thinking back to you guys didn't grow up with the Muppet Show, but I keep thinking Kermit the Frog is in my head right now, and he's like, and Andrea Becker, yay! But anyway, yeah. Are you like going to be doing anything on your birthday or anything you're looking forward to?
Let's see one day at a time over here.
You're blanking. Well, no, that's totally fair. And just for like I know that your fatigue is playing a big role here. And last night is obviously I can't stand up to the reasons why you're fatigued. But there's one thing. So I have a dog, but I also have a cat, and I always close the door so the cat doesn't get in our room because the cat totally ruins like any type of sleep I'm gonna get. And for some reason, I came in late and the cat was already there. And I have no idea why I do this late at night, but then I will like get into positions to make sure the cat is okay. Like the cat is comfortable. And that is why I didn't sleep well last night.
You're a giver.
Because I have no idea why I do that. But like during the day, I'm like, I will push that cat off of anything. But at night, for some reason, I contorted. Today, we are honored to welcome Darcy Esiason. She's a social worker, but many of you may know her as a writer and an advocate who has shared her deep personal journey with IVF alongside her husband, Gunnar, and who lives with cystic fibrosis, and also spoke to us on a different forum. Darcy has been generously open about the highs and lows and all the details of fertility treatments, as her husband has, and from the unique challenges she has faced as a spouse with someone with CF-related infertility. She has found hope, resilience, and humor along the way. And through her blog, she's become a voice for so many couples who are wondering what family building looks like when health challenges are part of the story. So she has documented this path to motherhood, and she's raised awareness, and she's an incredible advocate. So Darcy, thank you for being here today to talk with us about life, love, cystic fibrosis, and the journey to building a family. And so thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited.
Lauren, you wanted to sort of start things off, so I'm going to hand it to you with our first dive into talking to Darcy.
I want to start at kind of the very beginning. And, a lot of people know that the dating world can be very scary. I know I had my fair share of dates before I found my fiance, which I'm very thankful for him. And although I'm always upfront about CF, it's my first date icebreaker a lot of the times. I know a lot of people aren't necessarily that open. And so really, how did you and Gunnar meet? When did you learn about his CF? What were your first impressions or questions? Kind of just everything at the start. I would love to hear.
So what's funny is that we're coming up just in a couple weeks in mid-October of our 10-year anniversary of when we started dating. So I have been a partner to someone with CF for almost a decade now. So it feels like a long time ago to think back and remember all those details. But Gunnar and I matched on a dating app, but I did know who he was because we had a mutual friend, someone I know from college, with someone that he went to high school with and who's still really good friends with his sister. So I knew about his CF going in, and we were talking, and quite frankly, I thought, I don't think I can enter the world of CF. I don't know what's going to pan out of just chit chat with this guy. But he invited me on our first date to a Ranger game, and I'm a huge Ranger fan, so sure, I'll go to a Ranger game. So our first date was a Ranger game on a Thursday night, and it went really well, but I still remember thinking, okay, this guy's awesome, but I don't know that I'm ready to take on this whole world of CF. And he had a pick line in at the Ranger game too. So there was, even if I didn't already know he had CF, I would have found out without him telling me. But he asked me on a date again, and we went on a date that following Sunday. And it was a great date. And I remember driving to work. I had a long commute when I had the job back then 10 years ago. And I was driving to work that following Monday morning. And I said out loud to myself in the car, the F word. Because I was like, I'm in it. How is my life about to have this huge change? This is not something I ever expected to happen.
First of all, we're talking about the New York Rangers, right?
Yes.
Not the
New York
Texas Rangers. Yeah. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, we're New York
Very
Rangers.
cool. I know, Andrea, you were going to say something.
I got goosebumps. Yeah.
So I'm
Anyway.
curious. You knew about
Keep
his
going.
CF, but did you know about the disease itself, or did you kind of Google immediately after you realized that he was going to be around for a while, or how much did you know at first?
So one thing Gunnar asked me, he said, if you have any questions about CF, I know this is heavy, I know this is a lot, please ask me, don't look it up. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And then, of course, it was a big lie, and I immediately Googled everything. And in those first few weeks and months, and honestly probably year at least of dating, I devoured all sorts of whatever internet CF content there was. I was reading it. Partly for education, but also just to kind of see what, if we were to continue dating, what my life would look like and what was going to change. So unfortunately, I did not listen to Gunnar's instructions, and I knew all about CF right away. The one kind of thing we talk about is probably a month into dating, he said something to the effect of hey, I just feel like I should be upfront about this. Men with CF face infertility. And I think I was like, what? Really? But of course, I had already Googled it. I had known, I had processed that piece of information a little bit. And I also remember when I told my friends, maybe like a couple months later, hey, I'm dating a new guy. I have this new boyfriend. He's awesome. He has CF. And they learned about CF. The one thing that my friends brought up with me was, okay, like, sounds like you can handle it. That's great. But Darcy, you always really wanted to be a mom. Like, you always, since you were little, said you want to have 10 kids. How are you handling the infertility piece? And when I think back to that time, I'm just someone, since I was little, I've always wanted to be a mom. I've always wanted to have kids, and it was just the number one most important thing to me always. And I feel like I was so far on that spectrum of, I know I'm going to be a mom. I knew that some way we would figure it out if this was to be the person I was spending my life with.
So you are somebody who researches. And so it sounds like research is a way that you can help manage maybe some of those unknowns and uncertainties, and like you can research your way into like finding solutions. Did you find that that was the case with the, all that investigating you did with IVF? And is there anything that you look in hindsight you wish you did differently? Did it cause more anxiety? Did you feel like, empowered? Tell us about that process, because you clearly like to do your homework.
I think that the information was definitely empowering for me. And I work in research. I do social work and psychology related research. So back then I had access to scientific journals, and now everyone kind of does. But back then you had to have all sorts of like logins and stuff to get in there. So I read probably every single, which especially even 10 years ago, there weren't that many articles about CF and IVF. And I found people on social media who had CF and had kids, and I followed them, and it was definitely empowering for me.
Okay. Did you like teach Gunnar a few things then too? Like you learned so much. He's like, wait a minute, wait, I got to do what?
So back to that conversation where Gunnar told me about infertility, what he said to me was, so I have to tell you, men with CF were infertile, and I was like, oh wait, what? And he said, yeah, we don't have a vas deferens. And I said, what? And he said, we don't have a vas deferens. And I said, vas deferens? And he's like, no, but vas deferens. It's like, I actually don't think that's how you say it. So yes, I did teach Gunnar a little bit about stuff along the way.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, when he told you, and maybe you figured this out by now, but did he think infertility was going to be the biggest barrier, or did he have like a flipped version of what might be the bigger barrier?
He was pretty sick then. If you had asked him then, he wasn't letting himself think that far yet. Yeah. It was kind of a protective coping measure. So I think he told me and then probably didn't think about it much after that. But his story with infertility breaks my heart a little bit, because he was, he found out on Facebook when he was a teenager. He didn't ever have a medical provider tell him. And to be fair, I don't think people with CF back in the 90s and early 2000s were necessarily living long enough to do IVF. So I think it would be out of character for his medical providers to even tell him. But he has a sad story about finding out on Facebook and then just feeling absolutely crushed, and also not knowing the difference between infertility and sterility.
Yeah.
Will I ever have kids? Like, is there a way that doctors could help me have kids? So I think he didn't know that much about infertility back then, even when we were dating.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point too, that sterility and infertility are two different things. Sterility is where you're not making sperm and you're not capable of, but infertility would be that you make sperm and it's just not getting to where it needs to for fertilization. I will just share one quick anecdote to just, and maybe that will be a funny story, but I remember entering a room when I was in training, and I was with my supervising physician at the time, and maybe wasn't so great at communicating with the patient. And the patient, he was just sitting there, a young man, and the mentoring doctor turned to me and he said, Ahmet, have you ever palpated a vas deferens? And that kid knew what a vas deferens was. And he was just, his eyes opened up and he's like, nuh-uh, you're not touching you're not trying to see if I have a vas deferens. It's one of the funniest stories, but that just out of discomfort. But anyway, but that is it. Missing a vas deferens is what is the problem in CF, and so you can get around it. And Gunnar was kind enough to join us on a webcast to go through exactly the procedure that led to that. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that story, Darcy, and if you want to just reflect on Gunnar's experience.
Yeah, sure. So fast forward to the post-tricafta world, and we are talking about starting a family, and we are talking about infertility. Gunnar lives with, as many people with CF do, significant medical trauma and had a lot of very significant fears about the sperm extraction procedure. And I mean, without the medical trauma, I think most Y chromosome people feel very strongly about the idea of a sperm extraction procedure regardless. And so one way we coped with that, or I forced Gunnar to cope with that, because Gunnar kicked the can a little bit. Gunnar, was content to schedule the urology appointments. You're not available soon. Like, sure, let's do it 3 months out. So I'm a clinical social worker, and I do research now, but my research is in developing clinical interventions. So the clinical intervention is what happens in the therapy room. And one thing that we do in something called acceptance and commitment therapy is called cognitive diffusion. And it works particularly well with people who are living with particularly shitty things that aren't going to go away and aren't going to change. So a lot of therapy is about kind of outthinking your way out of different worries and fears and anxieties and feelings. But when you're about to have a scalpel to your testicles, it's kind of the fact that that's not going to be pleasant and it's going to be freaky and uncomfortable. So cognitive diffusion leaves that neural network alone. When you think the thought, oh my God, I'm going to have a scalpel to my balls, and you have this kind of sense of dread, we're going to leave that neural network there. But we're going to lay a new one on top. So that new neural network was in our house. We were living in New Hampshire at the time. I would just at random scream things like, needle to the balls, needle to the balls, needle to the balls, in different voices for weeks, so that there would be kind of this new neural network. So next time Gunnar thought about needle to the balls, he would have that kind of sense of dread, but it would be tampered a little bit by these memories of me being a weirdo screaming in silly voices about the sperm extraction procedure, which I will also explain. We thought it was going to be a needle to the balls. It was actually a scalpel. There are a few different types of sperm extraction procedures that Ahmet, you probably can explain way better than I can, but the one that Gunnar had was called a tesi, and they take a scalpel and they remove a piece of the testicular flesh where they're kind of guessing, taking an educated guess that there's going to be a good concentration of sperm in that area. And then this part I didn't know. They put the chunk of flesh in a tube, a little vial with a lid, and I drove it from the urology office, which was embedded in a hospital, to the fertility clinic, which was a 10-minute drive. So I took Gunnar, who was on a Valium for the procedure, so he was a little woozy, and this chunk of balls in a tube down to our fertility clinic, where then at their lab they extracted the sperm and froze it for IVF use about a month later.
Good for
First of
you.
all,
Thanks.
I mean, first of all, I have to say that you described that great. And, Andrea was choked up a minute ago. I was kind of choked up because, what an incredible, spouse. And I feel like this is the layering that you did, needle to the balls. I think that you did that out of just, even though it's as funny as it is out of this love and kindness to really try to make that a better experience for Gunnar, who did describe it as being kicked in the nuts. But what I didn't know, and I'm going to talk to urologists now, I don't know that we have a spouse take that sample and run it to the IVF clinic. I thought that we did that behind the scenes. So, no, it was you. Okay.
I did too until a couple days before. I guess if you have a urologist so we went to a third-party urologist within a hospital system.
Got it.
But it was, the appointment was at 6 a.m. We drove 2 hours to get there. It was a urology office in a hospital. We were the first ones there. Gunnar went in on his little Valium, And by the time he came out, the waiting room was full. And let me tell you, every person in this waiting room, it was like an 110-year-old man. And Gunnar
Yeah.
walks out feeling a little woozy, and he declares super loudly to the whole waiting room, "That was so easy."
I could see him doing that.
Did you get a Valium when it was your turn?
For my piece of the IVF, you just get knocked out. So,
There you go.
yeah.
Good. Good, good.
I love it. Well, that is. I appreciate you sharing. I mean, that's a shared story that you guys have, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. And but you did describe it. I mean, unfortunately, spouses and others become medicalized in a way that so much more. And you described that surgical procedure exactly like we would have.
I want to go back a little bit and
Yeah.
ask, how did you enter those family planning conversations? Like, how did you guys talk about, we both want kids. What are our options? Because, I'm not ready. But, when it is time for me, what would you recommend? Like, how do you start that conversation?
That's a great question. I think, again, I'm like so far on the spectrum of all I've ever wanted was to be a mom, and Gunnar knew that about me right away. So the door was kind of always open to that conversation. It was, we're also kind of a unique situation, and we did this right in the pandemic. So there was a piece to this, and we were moving. So there was a piece of just kind of figuring out where we were going to do it, where we could do it safely. We felt as though we should do things sooner rather than later. I just randomly have autoimmune diseases, nothing serious, thyroiditis and celiac, which are sometimes connected with not necessarily infertility, but soon younger, kind of lower AMH or your egg quality and your egg reserve. So we felt we just wanted to do things sooner and get embryos on ice. And then after we got married, go from there. But it was always kind of an open conversation with us.
I'm not super open about having those conversations. So props to you, because I'm over here like, I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's nerve-wracking for me.
And I think that's okay too. I think it's
Yeah.
okay to, table it till when it's right in front of you. I don't think either way is necessarily the better way of coping with it. I think that makes sense.
And I was going to say, this is sort of this is why, we're talking to you and you're talking to the CF community, is to, just give people a roadmap, or hope, that they can either follow or not, and just as they're figuring out their path with IVF or fertility. Andrea, you were going to say something.
How can you always tell? Well, I read, Darcy, some of your, writings from earlier. And one of the things that struck me was, and tell me if I've got this wrong, but you said that at first you were like, well, I'm not sure about this. And then like almost daily, you kind of moved the needle forward, or maybe it went backwards, but over time, maybe the course of a year or so, you kind of got to where you could see it happening, both the IVF and the CF and the relationship. But when it started, did it not feel 100% right to you, and then it sort of shifted? Or can you talk a little bit about that process for you, specifically with IVF and that type of conception? And then follow up to that, was there ever discussions around adoption or other ways to have kids, or was it always IVF?
My answer to this question is the absolute antithesis to my personality, which is 5-year plan, 10-year plan, logic, research. I, quite honestly, was just all in with Gunnar from really early on. And I had this feeling that it would work itself out, and no matter what, it would be worth it. And again, that is not my personality. I am not a risk taker by any shred of the word. In my vows to Gunnar, I had said that before I met Gunnar, I was a really happy person with a really amazing life, amazing family, amazing friends. Everything was going my way. And yet, meeting him still somehow completely opened my world and colored my world in a way that I didn't even know could exist. And through Gunnar, I became brave, which was something I never was, never thought I was planning on becoming. You know, I'm otherwise, again, that anxious, logical planner kind of person. But as someone who's also completely non-spiritual, it felt like a little bit like fate, that I fell for Gunnar hard and fast. And I was always all in, and I just thought we would figure it out, and I would become a mom. We didn't talk about adoption, but we fortunately didn't have to get to that point because we started with the IVF talk.
Yeah,
That is-
I don't.
Sorry, just such a beautiful answer.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I brought tissues in here. I was gonna say I don't know if it's my sister's influence, but but I love a good rom-com, and like this just sounds like just one of those wonderful ends to a nice movie.
Yeah, I just renamed the episode like 6 times also.
No, that's lovely. No, thank you
yeah,
for
yeah.
sharing that. So yeah, the planner, because we can hear from all of your writing and everything. We know that that's kind of like that's just you, and you're now still that person. But there's that Gunnar tapped into something else, and that's what people with CF do. They tap into those things, and that's why we love our CF community, and that's why I can't stop what I'm doing. Yeah, you were just doing a little dance there, Diddy, Andrea?
I was
You
just like
too, Lauren?
punching. That's what we do. We just like punch.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah,
keep
we're
going.
pretty awesome people.
Yeah.
But I
Us
do have
and
a
our
follow-up
spouses.
question after. So you said you're not very spiritual, but previously, before this podcast, you told us about some spiritual interventions that you experienced, and I'd love for you to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So leading up to IVF, so before we started, but in the months before we knew we were about to start, I, in the type A-ness I am describing, did every possible thing that was in the scientific literature, but also, the Reddit forums that I thought may improve our chances. And this was likely kind of, a control thing to ease some of my anxiety about it. So I took every supplement. I got rid of, any kind of cleaning product that we had that wasn't all natural. I stopped touching receipts at grocery stores, for the ink might cause some sort of toxic reaction that could impact my egg quality. Let me tell you, I did everything. Before I talk about the spiritual thing, though, I'll tell you my favorite IVF thing that is a little, feels almost like the woo, but is in the scientific literature. And this idea that laughing right after your embryo transfer increases implantation and pregnancy rates. And so there's been 2 studies on this. They're almost like a little bit dated now. I think about 15 years old. There was a study that took over 200 women who were doing embryo transfers in a hospital setting. And for about half of them, they did medical clowning right after embryo transfer. So literally a clown would go in and make these women laugh. And for the woman who agreed to the medical clowning, they had something like a 36% pregnancy rate, whereas the woman who denied the medical clowning had a 20% success rate. So I just think that's the power of laughter in science was really cool. So we have 2 children, and for both embryo transfers, we queued up funny things for right after embryo transfer. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the David Spade, Adam Sandler production movie, The Wrong Missy. Are you nodding,
I'm gonna
Lauren?
have to watch that.
Oh, yes.
Okay. The
I could watch
first
that.
5 minutes of that movie are the funniest 5 minutes of anything. You don't have to watch the rest of the movie. The rest of the movie is pretty stupid, but Andrea and Ahmet, you have to watch it. It's on Netflix.
Yeah.
The first 5 minutes of The Wrong Missy. It's
Homework.
funny. So I credit that movie partially to the success of the birth of our first child. But another thing that you'll see all over about IVF is acupuncture. A lot of IVF clinics actually have acupuncturists on staff. And there is a lot of scientific evidence to suggest that acupuncture can help with IVF success rates. And I was, again, doing everything. So like, okay, I don't like needles, but whatever. I'm about to have tons for for IVF. I'll sign up do a little acupuncture, and I'll probably just maybe relax a little bit. And I guess relieving my stress is probably a good thing. So I started acupuncture 3 months before we did IVF, and I went weekly. And I went to my very first acupuncture appointment. And the guy, who was very kind, he stuck the needles in, then he turned on some music, and he left the room. And I just kind of had my eyes closed, and I was relaxing. And all of a sudden, I could visualize kind of crystal clear this newborn baby. It's like, oh, that's pleasant. And then I came back a week later. Guy puts the needles in, leaves the room, turns on the music. And almost instantly, I had the same visualization of this newborn baby. And I just lied there, and I looked at this weird visualization in my head. And it just felt super peaceful. And I went home, and I tried to picture that image in my head when I wasn't doing the acupuncture, and I could not picture that baby. And then I went back the third time, and the guy, he stuck the needles in, put the music on, left the room. I closed my eyes. I'm excited to see this baby, and there's that baby. I'm visualizing this baby. And then I'm lying there, and all of a sudden, I kind of feel short of breath. So I'm taking these deep breaths, and then I feel a huge whoosh in my core, and I kind of gasp a little bit. And it was just an incredibly surreal, insane moment. And I went home from that acupuncture session, and I said to Gunnar, you're going to think I am absolutely insane, but our IVF is going to work. It's going to work on the first try. It's going to be a boy, and I know this because his soul just entered my body at my acupuncture appointment. And Gunnar was like, yeah, you do sound pretty crazy. And I am someone who did not grow up with any religion or spirituality. Like, I admire people who have faith. It just was not something that was ever kind of a part of my life. I didn't know anything about Chinese medicine. I didn't even know really what acupuncture was. And lo and behold, we started IVF 2 months later, worked on the first try. It was a boy. And it was just super crazy. And then flash forward, like almost 2 years later, we're doing IVF again, not a full round of IVF because we had frozen embryos. So gearing up for an embryo transfer. We're in a different state by this point. We had shipped our embryos down there. I didn't have time to do acupuncture. I didn't even think about doing acupuncture. But like 5 nights before our embryo transfer, I was asleep, and I woke up at 1 a.m, not from a bad dream. I was just awake, and I was just kind of lying there, not thinking about anything, when all of a sudden I felt short of breath. And I was kind of like huffing and puffing a little bit. And then I felt a big whoosh of energy enter my core. And then I went downstairs the next morning, and my mom was at our house, and Gunnar was there, and I was like, you guys, the embryo transfer is going to work, and it's a girl. And the embryo transfer worked, and then we found out weeks later it was going to be a girl. And we did not know the sexes of our embryos either time. Neither did the doctors. They were untested. And the kind of special part about the second time it happened was I felt that gush of energy. I felt it was that a girl had just entered my body, and that her name was Mika. And Gunnar and I, had we had a girl, had another name. Had we ever had a girl, had a name that we both liked, that we wanted to go with. And then out of nowhere, this name kind of came with the soul, if you will. And so when we found out it worked, and then when we found out, some 8-10 weeks later that she was going to be a girl, I was like, Gunnar, we have to go with the name that she told us her name was. He was like, I guess you're right. So our daughter's name's Mika. And we say that she named herself.
It's a pretty name.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I love stories like that. That's extraordinary. And I was just going to mention that laughter is the best medicine. Maybe it didn't come from that, but laughter is the best medicine. And there's actually 4 studies that really corroborate, sort of what you were describing. And then what else, this other experience you describe is extraordinary. And, it just shows there's a lot of things we don't know. And but I trust that was you were right on with that.
Yes, I'm now a spiritual person, and feel a different kind of connection to this universe than I ever imagined.
Yeah. Amazing. I was going to say what we didn't discuss, and I'm wondering people might want to just know about your the process of IVF. From we talked about what Gunnar experienced, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you experienced and what women can expect.
So in the female part, typically you start with birth control pills, which is such a weird kind of interesting thing, because why would you do birth control pills when you're trying to get pregnant? And at least in 2021, when you Googled that, it still was kind of unclear. It didn't make a lot of sense. But the idea is then your doctor can completely control your cycle and the day, to the moment that your cycle is on. So I started with about 3 weeks to a month of a birth control pill. And then despite being on the pill, you still get your menstrual cycle. It's not, I don't know, it's kind of the light pill light. And then day one, that's when you call the clinic and you start taking injectable medications that increase how many eggs you would release during when you would naturally ovulate. And that would be your egg retrieval day. So normally when you release one egg, this way when they go in, there hopefully are a lot more than just one for more opportunities to create embryos. So the injectable medications last a few days, and then you have kind of the egg retrieval. And then in standard IVF, then they take the eggs and they take sperm, and the sperm swim around in a petri dish with the egg, hopefully fertilize the egg. But in cystic fibrosis, they use something called intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where they take one sperm and they inject it directly into the egg, just to increase chances, and because also there's a lot of unknowns about sperm quality in men with cystic fibrosis. And then 5 days after that, you have the embryo transfer. So there's a big trope about IVF being it's a marathon and not a sprint. But I don't want to diminish how IVF really works for a lot of people. For us, we were extremely fortunate that from day one of my injectables to a positive pregnancy test was 17 days. So we were really lucky. I only had to take 6 days of injectable meds because I responded so quickly. And then from that, they were able to retrieve 8 eggs, which became 6 embryos, which then became, 6 blastocysts, which became 4 good embryos that from the exterior were all graded exactly the same. And people always ask us if then we tested our embryos for various reasons. There's different things and reasons people do test their embryos. One, if I was a carrier of cystic fibrosis, which I'm not, then you would be able to take a little tiny piece of the embryo, send it off to the lab, and find out which of the embryos would be affected by CF and which wouldn't be, and you would be able to implant the unaffected embryos. So a lot of people wonder if you are a CF carrier, can you even have kids with a partner with CF? And you can, you just have to take that extra step. And then it's becoming more standard practice to test for chromosomal abnormalities, although there actually is now kind of discourse about that being the right thing to do as well. But we were in our 20s when we did it, so our doctor said, if you're not a carrier of CF and you guys are young, we don't really need to be looking for chromosomal abnormalities. Statistically speaking, you don't have to worry about them getting tested, which is also thing about getting tested. For people outside the world of IVF in general, everyone thinks that one of the reasons to do testing is to find out the sex of your embryos. And we have a boy and a girl. We're super lucky with how things turned out. And people always assume that we picked. And then even when I say, no, they were untested, we didn't pick, they think we have people who thought we were lying. But no, truly, our embryos were untested. So not only do we not pick, our embryologists didn't pick, ours were. So what they do, if you don't have them tested, they grade them on the outside. They call it like a beauty pageant. They're just kind of looking to see how they've developed under the microscope. And they grade them that way. And ours were actually graded exactly the same. So it was kind of, I don't know how the embryologist picked which embryos go in. What was kind of fun for us was we were planning on doing IVF a year before our wedding just to get embryos in the freezer. It's best to do it as young as possible. And because of 2020, it got kind of kicked down the road and all the pandemic and getting appointments and Gunnar not wanting us to do appointments in person before the vaccine came out. all sorts of things. So by the time we did IVF, it was April of 2021, and we were getting married in June. And I said to Gunnar, why are we going to freeze them all if we're just going to thaw one out in 3.5 months anyway and try to get pregnant? He was like, well, I don't know. And then I was like, well, what if we went for a fresh transfer, which is when instead of freezing all of the embryos, you take one on day 5 and you implant it. Well, if it worked, if it doesn't work, I mean, statistically speaking, it very likely could not work, then we'll try again with the frozen embryos over the summer after the wedding. So we went with the fresh transfer. It worked. I got pregnant right away. And then I was almost 13 weeks pregnant at our wedding, and we got to tell everybody in the speech, our welcome speech on the dance floor. So that was really fun. And our son, who is now, he's going to be 4 in December, likes to look at our wedding photos. And he says, I was there. I was in your belly. I'm there too.
Aw,
That's so cute. I love that.
yeah.
That is a great story. I was going to say, on average, it does change with age, but it often does take 2 to 3 cycles. And the embryo selection is, because I always find that to be interesting, it isn't when the egg is just a single egg. Obviously, it is after 5 or 6 days that they do that embryo selection, because it's in a stage called blastocyst when they select one of those. And I think it's incredible that we can do that now. And then also you can now test things with the baby and the genetics through sampling blood from the mom. It used to be that you used to do an amnio procedure, and there's reasons you probably still need to do that, but you can sample peripheral blood from the mom and find the eggs that are coming from the placenta and the baby to test, genetics on the fetus as well. So technology is really just, moving fast, and there's more things that are possible now than before. But that is extraordinary, walking us through that. So I really appreciate that. Also, just going back, and I mean, the fresh, embryo, the fresh transfer they did also just really like that. That also is just a really, just interesting thing that other people may just not know about. So thank you for introducing us to some really interesting new concepts.
Of course. It's funny, it's not that long ago, but I almost feel like I'm forgetting a lot of the details of how it works, because our son is almost 4 and I haven't slept in a really long time, and my brain does not retain information the same way it used to.
It comes
now
back.
it's
It comes back.
it's been archived forever and ever on this podcast.
We hope so.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that I want you to just speak to us about, the foundation and the important work that it's doing, and it's how it's reaching people who, may not have the means, or, will struggle, since IVF isn't always covered, especially in certain states, by insurance. Tell us about the work you're doing to ensure that, as many people as possible with cystic fibrosis can have access to this type of care.
Sure. So I am the director of the Boomer Esiason Foundation IVF grant program, which is something that Gunnar and I really wanted to start after we had our son. I also operate our educational program, which is just an Instagram account, which is at BEF_family, where we provide educational content, usually co-produced with experts in the field, all sorts of doctors, patients, people who've been through it, advocates. And that is because when we were going through it, we had a lot of unanswered questions that people couldn't answer, including our own, medical teams in all sorts of different states when we were going back and forth. So we have that, and we also have the IVF grant program, which we launched in February of 2023 after kind of building the scaffolding for it for about a year. And I am super excited and proud and privileged to say that we have provided the grant to, so you know what, we actually opened the grant portal this week for applications that are due on November 3rd. So with this, we will have probably awarded the grant to over 40 people. We have 11 perfect, adorable babies come out of our grant, and we have 11 more babies cooking right now on the way. And I run the grant myself, so I work with all of our families So I get to know kind of every single family because I kind of operate as a concierge between the families and the clinics. So it's just an incredible honor for me to kind of really get to know these families personally. And most of our families are men with CF. However, we have had many women with CF and their partners. And what we hope we're providing for the most part is kind of like what Gunnar and I went through. Men with CF, they have to do IVF no matter what because of this congenital absence of the vas deferens. We're able to fund a round of IVF for them. Hopefully it works right away because it's, pretty cut and clear. But we also, we worked with families in some really unique situations. We have a family where it's a man with IVF and his partner, but they also had to test out for a different genetic disease. They paid for multiple rounds of IVF on their own, and they just kept coming back with affected embryos when there was really only a 50-50 shot they would have affected embryos for this other disease. So it was just really like a bad luck kind of issue. And they had paid for so many rounds of IVF, which comes out to like $25K each, and they kind of hit the end of the line. And so we were able to kind of give them that next chance. And they just found out this past weekend that they're having a boy, and their baby is due in the winter. And through our grant, they got one unaffected embryo, and it worked.
Wow.
Sorry, it makes me
That's
emotional.
amazing. I know we can tell. Oh my gosh, what a great thing to be tracking 11 babies and 11 cooking. Like I just love that those are metrics
It's
that
amazing.
you're looking at. Yeah,
It's amazing. And we have families with other inflating issues. We had a family who, again, like they saved all their money. They paid for multiple rounds of IVF on their own, which kind of were bad luck things. One got canceled by, she tested positive for COVID with no symptoms, like the day before the retrieval, $20,000 flushed down the toilet. So when we work with these other families, and another family who, again, they tried the IVF, it didn't work for years, they didn't even know why. I had one of the awardees say to us, she said, even if this doesn't work out for us, you've given us hope, the hope that there's another chance out there. And that was a family who had paid for rounds of IVF on their own and just ran out of, the cash to do it. And now they have a little girl who just turned 1. So it's extra special when we are working with these families who are going through all these other circumstances too. All of our awardees are people who really want to be families, and they're, hardworking people, and they absolutely deserve it. But that IVF becoming so expensive, it's significantly more expensive this year than it was just 2 years ago when we started. And most people, in all classes don't have $25K, $50K if it doesn't work the first time, in expendable cash or, with loans and stuff to take out extra credit cards to pay for it. It's crazy. I say to Gunnar all the time that I hope I have a long life and can do impactful things. But if this was the last good thing I've done, or that we've done, I don't mean to take credit for it at all, but if being able to run this IVF grant is, if that's it, then I will be a completely fulfilled person. And hearkening back to the beginning of the podcast, saying I almost felt like there was some divine intervention, falling for Gunnar hard and fast and putting aside every rational worry. It was kind of to get us here.
yeah.
And to be able to help people with IVF.
I was just gonna say that, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's obviously such a intimate story. You always wanted to have children, and so now you have your own children, and you really are expanding your family because these are children that are being born thanks to the work that you're doing and this the initiative of the foundation. So your dreams of becoming a mother are really just expanding, with every family you help.
Thank you. And that's just the ultimate privilege and gift. And I say this, our family motto is becoming like, how lucky are we? Which isn't, not usually something that CF families have been able to say until very recently.
Thank you, Darcy.
Yeah. It's so
I'm
true.
like speechless from it all. I don't know what to say. Thank you for everything you're doing, by the way.
I'm the luckiest. I can't believe I'm in this spot where I get to do this.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Which is like a part where
What?
we're segueing to something more funny now. So, I
We
mean,
need a
first of
laugh.
all,
Yeah, we're gonna lift the spirits.
So I was gonna also say our family motto is set your expectations low. That's like, so that like, you know, that's to increase our chance of happiness. But that's like, for some reason, I feel like we're terrible parents, like, because that was our family motto for our kids.
That's so inspirational.
That was
Anyway.
my family motto growing up, so it worked out.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. But your family motto is unbelievable, and it is, we should all be thankful for every day that we have like this. And this is great. This is a great, wonderful day right now, all four of us talking. But we are going to segue into wrapping up our wonderful podcast, and we are so grateful. What we'd like to do now is we're going to, there is two things that we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a little left turn, and we're going to have some fun and ask you some rapid questions. Lauren and I are going to alternate asking you questions, and you just come up with the first thing that comes to your head. And then we're going to, Andrea is the scorekeeper, and she's going to tell us how many points you racked up. And the prizes are just like ridiculous. I mean, you're not going to
I
believe it.
mean, they are.
All right.
Yeah.
Lauren, I'm going to have you start this time.
Okay. So
You
Darcy,
ready?
what is the best way to cut a sandwich? Triangles or rectangles or diagonals or however
Diagonal.
you
Triangles for sure.
Which one tastes better?
Triangles.
Okay. I mean, it's just, we got to get rid of that question. 'Cause
There's a
it
right
seems
answer
like-
to that question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no one said the other type
Yeah.
yet. I'm
Could you
kind of
imagine?
disappointed.
Like, because it doesn't make, but it also doesn't make any sense if you did. Then you'd have to rethink like your cutting.
I was saying I didn't write that question.
Okay, Andrea.
We're not going to throw anyone under the bus. So next question. You get one movie to watch for the rest of your life. What is it?
Father the Bride.
When Grey's Anatomy makes a medical drama about CF, what's the one thing they always get wrong?
That the parents aren't there. There's no CF mom. It's always like a CF teenager all alone in the room.
Yeah. True or false? My favorite color is hot pink.
False.
Correct.
Timmy Chalamet or Benson Boone? I don't know why I call him Timmy. Timothy
Benson
Chalamet.
Boone. That's an easy.
Okay.
Gold or silver?
Gold.
Sweet or salty?
Salty.
What is the most used app on your phone?
Probably Instagram. Although I have it locked.
I know you said that with some pain. You want it to be you want it to be something else, but
Another
it's
guest said that the same way.
like, oh.
We're all like,
All right, last one. Cats or dogs?
Oh, dog.
Yeah, we knew the answer to that one.
Okay. Well, thank you for playing. What does that have to do with anything? Time's up, Darcy, and you got 1,650,000
Oh, shoot.
0.25 points, which you can cash in on your way out of your virtual stay with us. And you know, at the end of the year, we add your points up with all the other guests, and you'll get an email if you won.
You're
Great.
pretty high up.
I'm looking
That
forward to
you're
it.
pretty high up there with that score.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
you are.
Let's move on to our next segment, which is Andrea's putting together a nice compilation of everybody singing what Andrea sang at the beginning of this segment, and we would love for you to also sing "It's a Long Story."
Sing it however you feel. You can't be worse than me.
It's true, you can't.
It's a long story.
Beautiful.
I love it.
That-
I love it.
best one yet, I think.
Wow. Million
I love
points.
that. I love like everyone's interpretation of it. It's so good.
Everyone go follow us on at It's a Long Story on Instagram, Spotify, anywhere where you get your podcasts. We would love to connect with anybody who wants to connect with us. And so, leave a rating, review, tell us how awesome Darcy is in the comments, please.
Okay, guys, until next time,
Get a little older.
Live a little bolder.
we are working hard to provide meaningful information to a deserving CF community, information you won't find anywhere else. If you'd like to help us grow, we'd greatly appreciate it if you would follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, so you never miss an episode. Want to go all in? Leave us a rating and a review. It helps people find us and makes a big difference. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend, family member, caregiver, or provider who might also want to hear it. This helps you, it helps them, and it helps us spread the word to those who need to hear it most. It's a Long Story is produced by me, Andrea Gavin Becker, and is hosted by Dr. Ahmet Uluer and Lauren Harvey. Additional editing and production support is provided by the team at Resonate Recordings. Until next time,
Get a little older.
Live a little bolder.